What's going on, everybody? Dylan Napoleone with Cage Side Press, joined today by quite the athlete. He's a former Houston Texan, a former professional rugby player, but most importantly, a current UFC light heavyweight, boasting a professional record of 6-2. Zac the Ripper Pauga. How are we doing today, Zac?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. And it's eight
Awesome.
and two. I had two
Eight.
fights on the Ultimate Fighter. Those
Oh
were real
yeah, they don't
fights.
put it in
They
your
don't
they
count
don't put
them,
it
but
in your
those were
record.
real. Those were real fights.
They sure were against some of the highest level guys. So yeah, thank you for that. 8-2 against some great guys on the Ultimate Fighter, where we enjoyed watching you, man, and I look forward to talking to you about that. But once again, thanks for the time, man. I know you are preparing for February 10th. You're gonna make your first walk of 2024, man. How you feeling? How's the camp? What's the excitement like for you?
I'm feeling great. I'm feeling amazing. I haven't fought in a long time.
That's
It's for
yeah,
me, a long time for me. Like six, I'm not trying to take 6 months off between fights. And
right.
so I've been hungry. I've been training
That's
hard this whole time. And like you guys are gonna see a version of me that's completely different than anything you've seen before.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was anticipating hearing from you. I know 6 months away from the game, you've been super active ever since you made your first amateur fight, for that matter. But like I said, February 10th in Vegas, you're going to be taking on Bogdan Guskov, a guy who's been in the UFC light heavyweight division for a little bit, so he is a vet. But for you, what's the excitement like? How excited are you to get in there with this guy?
I'm really excited, and
Yeah,
I like that. It's a good fight for me. Like
yeah,
I feel like the UFC gave me a good winnable fight, a fight that I can go out and perform and win a bonus.
yeah.
Like it's all everything is lining up perfectly for me to start this year off.
And so I was going to ask you this to piggyback that. What makes this such a favorable matchup for you? Where do you see yourself being better in this fight?
So I just see myself being more well-rounded. I can definitely strike with him, but I can also wrestle.
Yeah,
And if you look at his back, like he's got a lot of finishes, but they're all the same thing. It's all right hands, right hand, right hand, right hand. So he's a big power puncher. He's strong, but his last fight, it didn't come off for him. He threw that right hand, didn't knock the guy out, and ended up getting choked.
right.
So it's just being more well-rounded than he is.
Definitely, man. And now with that being said, you get to start 2024, active. You're going to make your first walk in February. How exciting is it for you that you're going to have basically a whole year opened up for you? The rest of the year is pretty clear. Fighting in the first week or week and a half of February, then you got, the whole rest of the year. You plan to be pretty active and stay in there as much as you can this year.
Yes, I want to be active, but I am aware that I have to do my part, right? I
That's
fought
right.
in the big first week of February last time too, last in 2023, and had what some people may call a boring performance, and the they got me back in pretty decently, and then I had a rough decision loss, and then
Right.
they didn't bring me back, right? That was my whole 2023. So I'm excited to get started early in the year and do what I have to do so that the UFC and the fans want to keep seeing me and want to keep bringing me back.
Yeah. And I guess the last 6 months, like you said, you aren't a guy who wants to take that much time off, but talk to me a little bit about the past 6 months. I'm sure you've been training very diligently in the gym quite a bit. Is that what it's been? Just a whole lot of training these past couple months?
So it's been a ton of training. I did two like mini camps when there was some like rumblings of maybe a short notice fight. So
Right
getting
on.
myself ready, getting my weight ready, and then those didn't pan out.
Right.
So I kind of did two mini camps on the way to this fight.
Right. Yeah, I hear you. But with that said, you must be feeling pretty prepared for this fight, having, so many months of hard training under your belt. At least you're not jumping in it, short notice and stuff like that. You've had some time to prepare, and I'm sure that's exciting for you. But I know a lot of that preparing has been going down in elevation, right? That's where you've been at most of this for the whole career, pretty much.
Yeah, I live in Denver, and these are the guys that made me. These are the guys that
Yeah,
taught me how to fight.
ever since you came out of the NFL, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, yeah, talk to me, man. You started off with them as an amateur. You started off with coming into you came into the fight game with some great athleticism, and it seems like that they've been basically taking that athleticism and figuring out how they can make you the best MMA fighter. How have you seen your game improve, fight after fight, week after week, even being at elevation for such a long time now, or what, about 3, 4 years?
Yeah, almost 5 years coming up. It'll
Five,
be five.
five
It'll
years.
it'll
Wow.
be it'll be 5 years, like 2 weeks after this fight.
Wow, that's
So
awesome.
yeah, but it's just they literally made me. Like I came in with an athletic base, being big, strong, and fast.
Yep.
But I had no combat sports background. I didn't
Right.
wrestle growing up, no striking, no anything like that. And so they've turned me into who I am today, and giving me the tools to win each step of the way. Like when I started off, I was super grapple heavy because I had to use my physical abilities, being bigger and stronger and just running guys down, holding them down on the ground. And my striking has evolved along the way. And
Yep.
so now I'm just really excited to get out there and show the full scope of my game.
Yeah, and so obviously the past 6 months, I'm sure, were very influential in shaping you and taking some of those, I guess, things that you struggled with coming into MMA. I'm sure you're able to really drill those down and hustle and really tune some stuff in. Do you think that do you think that football to MMA is a easy transition, being that you're athletic, or do you think it's like starting a whole nother sport from ground zero, considering you have to learn, like you just said, the striking, the wrestling, stuff like that? Like, obviously you came in athletic, but talk to me, how easy or how hard was that transition?
It's weird. I would never say it's easy. It's
Right.
not
I,
it's not
that's a
easy
given.
at
Yeah.
all. But it's like, and I this isn't a I'm not trying to like talk trash at all. The
Right.
level of athleticism in MMA is very, very low. Like
Hmm.
that's just is what it is. No one is Very few guys are picking their first sport, or as kids deciding to become UFC fighters, MMA fighters. So your best athletes are not in the cage. But with that said, it's the hardest freaking thing to do.
Yeah.
Like it's so hard. There's so much to learn. There's so much to do. Like football, you get like you're only active for 4 seconds at a time. And if
Yep.
that's too much, you can still come off. You can come off, sit down, chill for a little
Yeah.
bit. That's not happening in fighting. You are
Right.
fighting for 5 minutes straight. You get to sit down for a minute, and then you're fighting again for 5 minutes straight. So it's like I wouldn't say it's easy, and I don't even think football's the best. Football's not the best like thing to cross over into MMA from.
Yep.
I just happen to have a passion for the game. I just
Yeah.
always loved MMA. Even when I was playing football, I was watching MMA, thinking like, man, I would love to do this someday.
Hmm. That's I was kind of guessing that you would give the answer, like you felt you definitely had an advantage, but with that advantage, you still had a lot to learn, obviously. I'm sure your cardio and stuff like that was pretty up to beat with running and stuff like that, but all the small technical stuff I'm sure was
One
huge.
is It's just different. Like I said, football is like short, explosive bursts.
Right.
I'm super, super explosive, but in MMA, it doesn't really matter how explosive you are for 4 seconds.
Right.
It matters how long you can sustain that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good take right there. So before I ask you a little bit about your rugby and football careers, I want to talk to you about something super cool that you were a part of a little while back. The Ultimate Fighter season 30. Talk to me about that experience. How cool was that for you? And also being a fighter that came from a football background, was that a cool thing to help you jumpstart your UFC career? Did that put you in a place where you were able to kind of like just learn the MMA culture real quick?
So it was a huge opportunity, and I was so lucky that it came about, when I was ready for it.
Right.
And it was just such an opportunity because of the sport of fighting, right? It's an entertainment sport. So it was like a free way to get my story out there and to get people to know about me. Like I said, I've
Right.
had 3 fights in the UFC, and but people still know me for being on The Ultimate Fighter. Like
That's a
that's what people know, and it's was free marketing for me that I couldn't turn down, and it was my shot. That was my At the time I was 5-0 on the regional scene.
yeah.
Like I thought I was pretty good, but it was maybe hoping for a contender series fight that summer, and the Ultimate Fighter came up, which it was just a no brainer
Yeah.
to do it.
And the hardcore training that you did day in and day out with the same guys, you think that was something that kind of helped put MMA into a better perspective, or do you think that because you had your whole amateur career, you'd been training MMA, it was just kind of, a cool opportunity?
So it was really nice and eye opening for me because, like I said, like you said, I started with Team Elevation. My first
Right.
my first training partner ever was Curtis Blades.
Yeah,
Number
that's
4 in the
so
world,
cool.
and I didn't really appreciate it. I didn't really appreciate or understand what I had. And then
Hmm.
I walked in there, and you're training with the guys that you're going to be fighting, and
Fighting. Yeah.
I just knew day one. I was like, oh my god, I'm going to beat all of these guys. Like
Hmm.
I trade like the people I see day in and day out are such a higher level than what I'm seeing right now.
Hmm.
And so it was a really cool, eye-opening experience for me to know that I'm at the right gym.
Yeah.
I don't need to consider or think about going other places. I'm at the right place.
Yeah, 100%. That's awesome. That's super cool. Thanks for giving me that little bit of insight. And to piggyback off of talk of fighting teammates and stuff like that, in the final round, you had to go up against the guy who was on your team from day one, Muhammad Usman. You know, the feelings that you have with that, like you've been this guy, he's been your teammate for the whole show. Now you got to fight him. How did that feel for you?
It was crazy for more than just that, and they didn't really highlight it. Uh, Muhammad was actually even on Team Elevation for a year before we both went on the show
Wow.
together.
Yeah, I
And
didn't know that.
like, yeah, and there was kind of a little split before he went on the show, but it was, full credit to him. He beat me. He knocked me
Hmm.
out. Full credit to him. But it was I went into that like knowing what happened in sparring and thinking that it was going to be the same as a fight. Thinking
Hmm.
like, dude, I always touch this guy up when we spar, and it's going to be simple. And then he cracked me and put me out with one shot.
Hmm.
So that not taking anything away from him, but that was a piece of the game. Not like, oh, I don't want to fight my friend. It wasn't
Right.
that. It was like I thought I knew how things were going to go, and they clearly didn't go that way.
Yeah. So obviously, that's some credit to him too. That just goes to show how much his game improved since that 1 year where you guys were training together. So, yeah, man, I definitely know where you're coming from. The teammates that you had, the coaches that you had, I'm sure it was a cool experience to be out there. The Tough House. What were some of your favorite things about being in the Tough House?
So I actually loved it, man. People talked about hating it. People talked about all this stuff. They buy you, as far as food and groceries go, they
They
get
just
you
pack
whatever
it
you
in.
want. They
Yeah,
you have a list, and they will give you whatever you want
that's
every
awesome.
single day. You can have whatever you want. And I was fighting at heavy, so I get maybe the girls that weren't too keen about that because they had to cut weight.
Yeah,
I was at fighting at heavyweight, so I didn't have to cut any weight. So I was just living like a king for 7 weeks,
yeah,
and it was cool. Just
yeah.
it was the literal dream that you think about. Eat, sleep, train. That was it.
I
Eat, sleep,
believe it.
train.
Yeah,
Eat, sleep, train. Eat, sleep,
yeah.
train. No outside thoughts, no outside inputs, no television, no phone, no anything.
Yep.
So I liked it. It was a great experience, and it led to some of my best fights were on the show. So
Yeah.
it was great.
And so, one more question about the Ultimate Fighter. Do you still have any relationships with any of the people that you were there with, or have you guys kind of grown apart at this point?
Yeah, so it's been 2 years, I think, since that show.
Hmm.
I actually just talked to Bobby Maximus today. We're
That's
still tight.
awesome.
Me and
That's
him are
cool,
still
man.
good, but we connected in the house because we're both old. Like
Right.
I'm happy he was on the show
Hmm.
because everyone talked about how old he was, and they didn't even talk about the fact that I was 34.
Yeah.
No one cared I was 34 because he was 44.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
Yeah.
And me and him are still super tight and stay in touch. I still talk to Caitlin every once in a while.
There you go.
Claire's on my team. Claire's
Yeah.
still on Team Elevation. So yeah.
Yeah.
But other than that, you know,
Not
not
really.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Figures you meet a lot of new people along the way. Everybody kind of spreads away. I know Jordan Heiderman, I did some work with him at the PFL this past year in New York,
Yeah.
so that was cool. I know now you're a UFC fighter, he's a PFL fighter. Everyone kind of spreads out a little bit. The transition from rugby and football to MMA, we touched on it, but and we talked about some of the advantages and some of the kind of easy parts. Obviously, we don't not exactly using the word easy, but let's talk about some of the difficulties, man. What were some of the hardest challenges when you started this?
So the big one was just cardio, man.
Yeah,
Just cardio. And that's what wrestlers, it's not that wrestling is this secret art, right? That has all these abilities to that are better than striking arts. It's the cardio that wrestlers have.
yeah,
That ability to keep going, keep grinding, keep wrestling. That was the main thing. And it took, like, I was fighting pro and still had
yeah,
cardio
yeah,
issues, you know. It
yep,
took me years to develop that base to be able to explode, which I'm good at, explode, go fast, but then kind of settle and
yep.
rest into it.
Yeah, definitely. It's like a football player or really any professional athlete, like everyone pretty much thinks they have a good cardio or a good gas tank, but then when you get into MMA, it's how good is your gas tank when you're getting hit in the head, getting taken down
Exactly.
and stuff like that. So I hear you on that one. Do you feel like your cardio and everything you think you got everything down, or is there still some transitioning that you're still doing, or you think everything's perfect now?
So I mean, nothing's perfect. I can always get better. I'm always trying to get better. But I have, really, I my cardio is in a better place than ever. Like,
Yep.
we one of the probably the issues of with like all this sports science and training, right? We always try and reinvent the wheel or figure out better, easier ways to do something. Like, boxers and Muay Thai fighters figured it out 100 years ago. It's just road work, man.
Yeah.
It's just road work,
That's
and you got to do it.
yeah.
It's like, for the longest time, I came from football and rugby, right, which is a lot of running. So when
Hmm.
I was fighting, I was like, I'm not going to run anymore. I'll just spar more, or I'll just hit the bag more. You don't run in fighting. No, man, you got to run and you got
That's
to do it.
yeah. Yeah, especially like getting back up and stuff like that from being taken down. So when I know you hinted at it and you kind of told me why, but when you were on the Texans and you were like, all right, man, it's time to change it up. It's time to do something a little different. I'm gonna give venture into MMA. What made MMA so appealing for you to really just kind of took a risk, right? What was so appealing about MMA for you?
Well, so just so we're clear, like, I don't want people to think that I like left football to be an MMA fighter. I got cut from the Texans. Like,
Right.
I
But you
got
could have
cut, and
pursued
then
football
and
more.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I just was interested in MMA, and I love fighting and MMA. Like, as a fan, I was a fan of the sport.
Hmm.
So in between, like, being done with football, I'm like, okay, I still got to exercise. I still got to do something. Uh, so I just started doing jujitsu.
Yep.
Just like found the closest gym to my house, and it just happened to be where Elevation Fight Team trained.
Yep.
And they didn't know
That
anything about me. Like, they didn't know who I was. They weren't, big fans of Houston Texans practice squad players. They just
right.
saw a big guy. They were like, oh, we need you, this big body. Can you come in and roll with Curse Blades and train with Curse Blades? And I,
Hell
luckily
yeah.
I'm crazy, so I was like, yeah, I'll do
Yeah.
it. It's cool. And he smashed me. He absolutely destroyed me. But I was like, dang, that's the number 4 guy in the world at heavyweight. That's the number 4 fighter on this planet.
Yeah.
Maybe I could be okay at this sport.
Yeah.
Told his coaches, I kind of want to do this, or I want to try it at least. And we just ran from there, and everything's
That's so
worked out.
cool, man. That's awesome. I feel like a lot of other guys in that situation kind of would have stuck to what they're good at. I feel like maybe some people would have went into coaching, they would have tried to play overseas, stuff like that. But you said, all right, I'm gonna transition to a whole nother sport. And that's very respectable move by you. That's pretty cool. Now, when we talk about the transition, what kind of advice, and I know you're not the first one to do it, having a heavy football background and then kind of switching into MMA. I met another fighter a couple months ago, Josh Hokett. He's a Bellator fighter. Pretty cool guy. He made his Bellator debut, and he did the same thing. I don't know if he got cut. I don't know like what actually made him leave the NFL. But all I know is he picked it up and became an MMA fighter. Won his MMA debut. Super cool. But what kind of advice would you give to other people who are thinking about doing what you did?
So the biggest advice, and I tell this, we have one new guy on the team that's um, just out of college. He didn't make the into the NFL, but he's a college football player that wants to get into fighting.
Hmm.
And we also Brian Shaw, the world's strongest man, just joined the team
Wow.
and is taking a fight a week after mine. And I told them both the same thing. Like, understand you have these physical advantages, but don't think you're going to like jump the line because of these physical advantages. You got to go take white belt jujitsu. You have to go take day one striking class
Yeah.
because you can get away with stuff. Your athleticism will let you get away with stuff until it doesn't. Until you don't want to find yourself all of a sudden in the UFC and you don't know how to defend a single leg, and you're
Right.
getting put down and your family and friends are watching you get choked out. But there's this, because the athleticism level is so low in MMA, there's this, like, people want to jump, they want to skip steps because they're just like, man, I am so much bigger, faster, and stronger than anyone that I'd be fighting.
Yep.
I'm not going to go to white belt jujitsu and roll with a guy, with four kids that's just here on his
Yeah.
lunch break.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? Jiu-jitsu is a thing where it's literally made for a guy who's tiny to be able to beat a guy who's, huge. It's made so that it's a kind of even, and it's a technique kind of. Obviously, control has a lot to do with it, and being bigger gets you a lot of control. But man, that's kind of like what jiu-jitsu was kind of invented for, you know?
Yeah, and then when you have the guys that have that skill level and our athleticism, that's when we're talking about world champs.
Yeah.
That's your John Jones, Tom
Yeah,
Aspinall, Curtis
literally.
Blades,
Yeah.
these guys that are physical freaks and learn the technique.
Yeah, that's a great example right there. I like that a lot. So I scrolled back on your Instagram earlier today, man, to do a little bit of research. I pulled out this quote from a post that you made a little while back. It said, "Been stopping takedown since 1994." And that's when you were playing a lot of football, college, stuff like that. How much and what kind of specific things translated directly from football to MMA? Obviously, as a running back, you had guys diving at your knees, so you were kind of defending
Mhm.
takedowns since 1994. And I assume that the takedown defense was like it kind of impressed you. It was kind of there, I'm assuming. But what other kinds of things were that, helped you make that trend, or what kind of
Yeah.
skills? Go ahead.
Yeah, so that's the big one. Everyone always, like, I train with great wrestlers, Curtis, Devin Clark, great wrestlers on my team, and they always talk about how hard I am to take down. Like, man, you're so
Yeah.
hard to take down. It's like, yeah, man, people have been trying to take me down my whole life.
Yeah.
And it's that the biggest thing is like the physical body conditioning, right?
Yep.
That you get from just getting hit over and over and over, right? The Thai boxers, right? They slap their legs with bamboo or something like
Yep.
that. I've been having grown men wearing suits of armor run into me full speed my entire life.
Yeah.
Literally my entire life. I started playing football when I was 6 years old.
Yep.
You know, my
That's
entire life.
yeah.
So, like, as far as like physical pain and physical pressure, I have a ability to take that's above a lot of even other like strikers.
Definitely, man. And so I know this isn't a question that you always want to hear, but like obviously you came from a football background where you were getting hit all the time. I'm sure you got rocked a couple of times when you got knocked out for your first time. Like what was that kind of like? And I hate to ask that question, but did football kind of almost prepare you for that? Like had you been in that state before?
So no, I'd never been knocked out in football before, and I was completely unprepared for it.
Yeah.
Like, and that was the roughest part. The hardest part about accepting that loss was that, like, mentally I was prepared if someone was like better than me, or I
Hmm.
was prepared if someone's wrestling me and grinding me, and you think you're gonna have all these reactions, or at least you can live with it if this dude just beats the crap out of you and is
Yeah.
better with you.
But that
I
was a
would I
brand new
was
feeling.
yeah, I
Yeah.
was not prepared to be winning a fight, to be winning a fight up on all the scorecards, and then just waking up in an
Yeah.
ambulance and going,
Yeah.
what happened?
So yeah, I didn't know if you had ever taken like a huge hit that kind of felt like that moment or anything like that.
Well, I've had my bell rung, like I've had my
Right.
bell rung a ton, but I had never had my lights put out,
Right.
like
I know that
out
doesn't
out.
happen very
Yeah,
much at all, but yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for answering that. I know it's like kind of like an unpopular question, but I definitely wanted to see if
but it
taking
just
any
is what it
huge
is.
hits like that. Yeah.
It's part of the game. It's part of
Yeah.
the game.
That's it, man. Well, thanks. I got two last things for you. I'm sorry, my phone is blowing up over here. A perfect 2024. Now you get to start off 2024 with a fight pretty early. What else this year can make this year everything and more that you've ever, wanted out of this sport?
So yeah, I got goals, man. I got goals. I'm looking to fight at least 4 times this year. I want, like I said, I want to be active at least 4 times. And my number one goal for 2024 is to get out of the Apex. Man, I want to
That I,
fight
yeah,
on a pay-per-view card in front of a crowd.
yeah, I think that's a great goal. You're fighting at the Apex again, but obviously you get the Vegas experience. I'm sure you'll be able to enjoy the PI quite a bit while you're there.